So let's go ahead and get started. My name is Christy Heid, and I'm a simulation specialist here at UbiSim, working with nursing programs and hospital systems to identify opportunities for immersive VR integration into your simulation programs.
Thanks, Christy. Hi, I'm Christy Vogel, lead nurse educator at UbiSim, and I design immersive VR experiences that build clinical judgment and bring nursing education to life. And I work with an amazing team to create in-headset features that reflect real practice. This presentation is a collaborative effort with special thanks to Debbie Loop, Marissa Kloss, and Maggie Major.
Okay, so now let's get the conversation going. Please feel free to share your insights in the chat tab, and we invite you to ask questions by typing them in the Q&A tab. We'll answer those as soon as we can and have special time at the end of today's presentation. So before we begin, we always have to talk about our learning objectives. So today, we hope by the end of this session, you'll be able to identify 3 key features of UbiSim's intuitive editor for customizing scenarios, demonstrate basic edits like uploading documents and previewing in VR, and explain how to enhance realism by modifying medical orders and patient symptoms, all while aligning with the clinical judgment measurement model. UbiSim offers 2 comprehensive scenario catalogs, evidence-based simulations created by UbiSim nurse educators and community-shared scenarios from partner institutions, covering core areas like fundamentals, med-surg, mental health, OB, and PEDS. All scenarios are aligned with the NACSL standards and include pre-briefing, immersive VR, feedback, and debriefing. They also support key frameworks like the Next-Gen NCLEX, CJMM, and AACN Essentials. Educators can easily customize or build simulations from scratch, bringing us to today's focus, exploring the intuitive editor. So let's take a look at example scenarios. This one is featuring Joan Rogers, a patient with type 2 diabetes who develops hypoglycemia. Using the UbiSim intuitive editor, you can easily customize this case, shifting the focus to hyperglycemia, DKA in type 1 diabetic, or even adapting it to a pediatric patient. We've provided possible customization examples for each scenario in our catalog of over 50 scenarios. With UbiSim's intuitive no-code editor, nurse educators can easily create custom simulations tailored to your institution's protocols and workflows. No programming experience needed. The drag-and-drop interface makes scenario design accessible for any instructor, and complexity can be adjusted to match learner levels, aligning with Benner's novice to expert model. This ensures students get targeted practice in realistic program-specific clinical situations and settings. Now let's take a quick look at how easy it is to use UbiSim's intuitive editor. To preserve the original scenario, you'll simply go to the Scenarios tab, select your scenario, click on Actions, and choose Duplicate and Edit. After that, you'll confirm and move into the Scenario Editor. Here, you are ready to customize, whether it's changing Joan Rogers to John Rogers, or making more advanced edits as you go along. Here, we've renamed the scenario to John Rogers and labeled it as a complex type 2 diabetes management case. It now will appear in the My Scenarios tab. If you've used other simulation tools like I have, UbiSim's intuitive editor will feel familiar, but more powerful and simplistic. I'd like to highlight the 6 tabs at the top of the editor. You can customize everything from here, including simulation flow, EHR documents, supply carts, environmental equipment like a 12-lead EKG, or even the debriefing structure. So let's begin with the Simulation tab. This lays the foundation for your scenario. Things like setting objectives, patient details, environment, and timing. You can choose a template, set the learner level, assign authors, and define the scenario length. From here, you'll be able to select a patient from diverse options based on your template. Here you can see that we've selected an adult male patient to replace the elderly female patient, turning Joan into John. In addition, you can also update 3 to 5 clear learning objectives. Faculty notes can be added here, and an SBAR style intro for learners is available here in the Scenario Information tab. The pre-briefing section helps prepare students for tutorials, preparation activities, and briefing messages to support psychological safety and a successful experience. Now, moving on to the Supplies tab, you can select equipment, medications, and blood products for learners to access during the scenario in VR, as you can visualize here. I'd like to take a closer look at these 3 areas. You can check off equipment simply by the click of a button, adding or removing things from hygiene or lab tests. You can free text add medications in various forms and change the dosages. And you can even program blood products like RBCs or plasma for delivery during this VR scenario. Everything that you see here that you modify will be interactive in VR and support realistic clinical decision-making. Now, looking at the Environment tab, lets you customize the patient room and equipment that's on the patient. Options can vary by different template. So you can add or remove items like monitors or call lights, place static catheters with characters with dialogues, place a catheter on the patient, or adjust patient-attached equipment like IVs or oxygen as well. Now, if you look at the PPE area, you can set required items and add signage. This really boosts realism and supports infection control training. Now, I'll hand it over to Christy, who will introduce our 3 unique features.
Thanks, Christy. So we're going to jump right in and look at 3 unique features in UbiSim's Intuitive Editor. The first one is uploading and integrating resources. The second one is customizing patient symptoms and dialogues. And then finally, adding unfolding medical orders. And these tools make it easy to create dynamic and realistic and targeted simulations. So our first unique feature is the ability to upload and integrate resources directly into your scenario. In the editor, you simply open patient files in our Documents tab, and then you can upload relevant files and multimedia. These resources will appear in the patient's EHR, enhancing realism and context for learners. Let's take a closer look here at what's possible in the editor. In the Patient Files section, you can upload or create documents that build the patient's chart, like a patient portfolio or provider orders, diagnostics such as lab results, medical images, EKG reports, and you can also do scenario-specific policies like a blood transfusion protocol. You can upload these files or use the free text option to create content. And once you've added them into the editor, these documents are automatically integrated into the scenario. And this is a side-by-side view of the EKG in the editor up top and how the EKG will appear in VR. All of our documents are automatically integrated into the scenario. So in VR, learners access them on a large interactive touchscreen that simulates a real EHR, allowing them to review and interact with the chart just like they would in real practice. Let's move on to one of UbiSim's most powerful tools, and that's customizing how the patient presents and responds. In the Scenario tab, you can define physical symptoms and patient dialogues. And we'll break this into 2 parts. First, how to simulate physical findings, and then next, how to create rich interactive communication. The Physio State tab lets you control how the patient looks and behaves at every phase. So starting with the vital signs, they can be static or they can be programmed to change over time. So for example, you can set a gradual drop in systolic blood pressure as the scenario unfolds. The same is true with all of the other vital signs. And beyond vital signs, you can really customize additional assessment findings to enhance realism. So with our inspection tab, you can adjust visual cues such as facial expressions, cyanosis, or peripheral edema. The palpation tab allows you to define what learners feel during their assessment. So for example, their pulse strength. They can use haptic feedback through the hand controller so they actually feel that pulse in real time. In the auscultation tab, you can program specific heart, lung, and bowel sounds that learners hear when they pick up the stethoscope and use it on the patient. For neurologic checks, you can control how the patient responds to a pen light exam, including pupil reactions like PERLA. So combined, all of these features create a dynamic and responsive patient that supports clinical judgment development. And I've got an example here on how different our patient looks just with a few clicks in the editor. Now let's explore how to enhance realism by customizing dialogues in UbiSim. In the Scenario tab under Shared Modules, our Dialogue section allows you to create authentic, patient-centered interactions. And adding dialogue is really straightforward. You can record your own voice or a voice actor's for a personalized touch, or you can use an AI voice generator and then upload those audio files directly into our editor. Dialogues aren't limited to the patient, so you can also customize dialogues for family members in the room to add emotional context or communication challenges. You can also add interprofessional team members via the in-room telephone. Outgoing calls provide learners with the opportunity to practice SBAR communication, or they can escalate care or give handoff reports. Incoming calls give learners the challenge of interruptions and communicating with the healthcare team on the fly. So these dialogue features help build communication skills and replicate the dynamics of real clinical settings. All right, moving right on to unique feature number 3, and that is adding unfolding medical orders that appear as the scenario progresses. So in our Scenario tab under Shared Modules, you can create provider orders that trigger in VR at specific points of time, reflecting changes in the patient's condition and keeping the learners engaged. Within this section, you can add unfolding orders such as new medications, new lab orders, or new blood products. And this mirrors how providers issue new orders and prescriptions in real clinical settings. Rather than receiving all of the details up front, learners must reassess and respond as the new orders appear. And these new orders can be triggered by either a change in the patient's status, a set time, or it can be coupled with a provider dialogue. So this feature enhances realism and challenges learners to apply clinical judgment, think critically, and act promptly as the scenario evolves. So UbiSim makes it really easy to tailor scenario complexity to fit your learner's level and simulation goals. So for beginners, you can simplify symptoms, limit communication, and provide only essential clinical data. And for your more advanced learners, you can layer in subtle or overlapping symptoms, add communication challenges like a family member or phone calls, and introduce evolving clinical information. The editor supports purposeful design, so every element from lab results to dialogues and orders can guide learners towards specific clinical decisions. So you can see in this picture the difference between Joan on the left and John on the right. And as healthcare simulationists, we know that learning continues long after the headset comes off. So let's highlight a key bonus feature, and that's debriefing. In the Scenario Editor, when you click the Debriefing tab, you can customize feedback, reflection questions, and the post-simulation quiz. And this allows you to design a meaningful debrief that builds insight and clinical judgment, whether used in small groups or in full class scenarios. It's quite flexible. Let's take a closer look at the debriefing tools available. First, the Session Feedback Report offers automatic insights highlighting critical actions completed and performance gaps that were designated in the scenario design. These are all captured in real time as the scenario ends. Next, the guided reflection is based on the Pearls debriefing framework, and this helps learners to reflect on their experience and identify key takeaways. And you can fully edit these open-ended Socratic questions to fit your objectives. And finally, there's the post-simulation quiz, and this features customizable NCLEX style questions in various formats. Every by UbiSim scenario also includes an editable unfolding case study presenting a 2-part clinical situation and 6 questions that align with the 6 cognitive steps of clinical judgment. That's a mouthful. And so with that, I will hand it back to Christy.
Tips you've shared with us today. So now we would like to hear from all of you. Please share your questions in our Q&A tab. It will be right next to the chat tab. And as we get started, I'm going to share with you a thinking beyond. Any good educator is going to know this or experience this as a learner. So, how would you modify the scenario for your learners? What would you do to make it simpler or more complex? So go ahead and share your questions in the Q&A. We're here to answer them. So our first question comes from Teresa. Do you have written instructions or a quick start guide? I'll let Christy take that one.
With UbiSim, there is an onboarding process, and so all of our information is in an asynchronous onboarding as well. We have all kinds of guides that help you get started, from the technology and getting that all set up, and also using the software as well. Yes.
Thanks, Christy. Our next question is the debriefing and quiz to be taken on a computer after the scenario?
I can take this one too as well. That's a really great question. So yes, the debriefing and quiz are going to be taken on a laptop, a computer after the scenario. So how this typically looks is learners will pre-brief using their laptop, and they will do their tutorials. If there's any tutorials that they need to do, they'll do those in the headset. They'll spend their 15 to 30 minutes in the VR session. And of course, they can repeat that as many times as you would like. And then the debrief is going to take place on the computer. They'll receive their session feedback. And then also the reflection questions are on there. They can be done individually, in pairs, in groups, or they can be led and facilitated by your instructor. And then there's the quiz as well. And all of that is editable. Thanks, Heidi.
Thank you, Christy. Great question. I think Samar's got a follow-up question about summarizing and analyzing the findings or the feedback from the learners. Feel free to clarify that, Samar, if I'm mistaken. But do you want to talk about the summary and analysis information that's available in our session feedback?
Yeah, absolutely. So after each learner completes their session, they're going to get an individualized report. So if they went into the session by themselves as an individual learner, it will contain all of the critical actions and performance gaps. They'll all be time-stamped. Multiplayer is also available as well. So up to 3 learners can get into the headset, and they'll receive a group debriefing session feedback, and their names will be timestamped. So you can see who did what during the scenario, who performed the critical actions, who might have done some performance gaps as well. And so you can take a look at your class and your cohort and see that feedback as well.
Thanks, Christy. That's some of my favorite features of the UbiSim platform personally. Good conversations unfold. So speaking of conversation, I believe Johanna has a question about dialogues and the conversation, asking about the use of AI. Would you like to speak to where we're at in incorporating AI into our platform?
Sure, I can do that. And so AI is a real hot topic right now. And of course, we have our fingers on the pulse for that as well. And our team is doing a lot of investigation with AI. I think what's most important is best practice when it comes to simulation. So we want to make sure that we introduce AI in a time where it is going to be very dependable. We want to make sure the confidence level is high. The patient isn't going to have, or the family members or anyone else, any kind of hallucinations or anything like that that can still be happening. So we do have an investigation going on. We are working on it right now. I'm really excited for what the future holds with this. But when it is ready to go, you'll be the first to know.
Thanks, Christy. I agree. It's exciting what's to come. And I'd like to emphasize how great the dialogues that exist. One of the things that we already have in place are multiple responses that a facilitator who can be a peer, for example, can select during the scenario. So there's a lot of great options already, and they sound incredibly authentic and realistic. So I love, Debbie asked a great question here, or statement. She said she can see so many options to expand this scenario. So I love this. You know, Joan to John was our first example, but she says the patient could be made more complex by adding underlying COPD. Great point. This could lead to respiratory distress, opening up opportunities for the use of inhalers or nebulizers. And those are some of the great features that we have available in our medications, don't we, Christy?
Absolutely. That's a really good idea. So adding and layering on that complexity as well. A lot of times, it just in our past of being simulation coordinators and educators, sometimes we see some of these diagnoses, just kind of being siloed, maybe a med surge patient or a mental health patient, but you can really put those together and increase the complexity of that as well. So lots of options to edit and scale.
I love it. It feels so real in there. I know we both enjoy getting in headset as often as we can. So one of the other questions that we had here had to do with downloading performance and to be submitted to a grade book. And I know that we have the ability in the facilitator portal or the administrative features as well for downloading some of that data. So I believe, if you want to correct me if I'm wrong, Christy, there is some aggregate data available as well as individual data for those individual users.
Yes, that's correct. And that it's all downloadable in CSV format.
Perfect. Thank you. Now, another question comes to us from Don, excuse me. Is there a potential to create standardized patients using AI for patient interactions? I think this is a great question. We always like to preface that all of our scenarios are standardized so that every learner's experience is going to be aligned with those objectives and outcomes as defined in the scenario design process. You'll be able to see all of those elements of scenario design as aligned with the healthcare simulation standards of best practice as you look at the needs assessment found in each scenario's information section and how that unfolds throughout each of those tabs as we've illustrated. So, Christy, would you like to speak to the standardization of our scenarios and the patient interactions?
Yeah, I think that's one of, well, I say this all the time, that's one of my favorite parts. I have a lot of favorite parts, but standardization is so key. And when we design scenarios, they're designed to unfold as the learner does actions or doesn't do actions in the VR headset as well. So it's a very standardized experience. And for instance, only the dialogue that is appropriate for the patient at that time of the scenario is available. So when your patient with COPD is really struggling to breathe, your peers or your faculty will not have access to trigger dialogues that say, I feel great. So it really takes the work out of it, and it really shows you, how easy it is to facilitate a session. And when I say facilitate, really, like Christy said, a peer can facilitate. And we've been hearing a lot of benefits about peer-to-peer facilitation as well. Peer-to-peer facilitation allows a peer to be able to get on the laptop and trigger dialogues. That's their only role, is to trigger the dialogues, and they're only the dialogues that are available. And so it really asks the peer to put themselves in the shoes of the patient. So it really helps to, build empathy as well. So lots of really flexible options with our scenarios.
Excellent. Thank you, Christy, for elaborating. So I know that we have a few more questions here, and we're coming to the end of our time. So I want to see if we can get through some of these. And if we don't, we can always make sure to follow up after the session. So one question from Samar, how many learners can play this scenario at the same time? Christy, do you want to take that one?
That's a great one. So sometimes you would want just one learner in at a time. And sometimes you want to work on that group communication and teamwork as well. So you can have up to 3 active participants in the headset at the same time. So keep in mind that those participants don't need to be in the same location as well. So they can be at another campus, for example, or your facilitator could even be, facilitating from a remote space as well. So up to 3 caring for the patient at the same time. And what works really well is, the learners, one of them can take care of the patient, one can be exploring new orders, one can be talking with the family member. But another way to get more learners into the headset is to have ghost observers. And so you can actually put more learners in the headset for a front row view of the simulation. And so your ghost observers, you can typically have up to 8, but that's going to depend on your network and how strong your network is as well. So it's a really great way to scale and get more learners in there as well. There's a lot of research that's been coming out right now about the role of the active participant and the role of the observer. And that role of the observer is really great. They're getting a lot of benefit from observing, and really getting that front row seat there just maximizes that potential.
Absolutely. And I love the ghost observer role because the learners don't see those ghosts in VR. So you don't feel like you have all those eyes on you. But like you said, you've got the front row view. And I'd just like to mention that when you are a ghost observer, you control how much that is moving. So if you're a little sensitive to movement from an active participant's headset, going in as a ghost observer really allows you to control that or create just a static fly on the wall. So great features that can also be cast to an external screen if you choose to, especially in large classroom settings. It can be very effective. So we are coming to the end of our time here today, and I want to thank everyone for joining us. If we were not able to answer your question, we will follow up with those questions with an email. In that email, I would like to let you know that you will also receive a copy or a recording, of this presentation, and within 24 hours. In addition, any registrants for the webinar, you will receive bonus material. So look for that in your email shortly. So here are all the references for today's presentation. And again, we would like to thank you for attending. As you can see, UbiSim's Intuitive Editor offers a no-code, easy-to-use solution to quickly customize and create immersive VR scenarios to meet your unique needs. We encourage you to explore the editor further and check out our online resources at ubisimvr.com for additional support.